All right, Harry Broadman is a former chief of staff on the President's Council of Economic Advisors. He joins us now live from Washington, D.C. Harry, thanks so much for being with us here on Al Jazeera. First, let me ask you what the shutdown means for the U.S. economy and what it means for the markets. What kind of impact is it having on the finances of the country?
It's not having a good impact at all. And I think the incumbent in the White House really does not win when the economy begins to implode, particularly when his party and the Democrats are not able to agree on moving forward. Markets are certainly beginning to figure this out. You know, there is the real problem of infrastructure freezing, whether it's not just passengers, but it's cargo. And you know, this is not a good way of moving the economy forward. And as I say, the incumbent president always loses when something happens to the economy. Trying to convince voters that it's not his fault, I think, is really, you know, a real tall order.
Harry, where do things stand for federal workers and contractors? I'm talking about the ones who aren't getting paid but are still showing up to work. I mean, is there even any kind of guarantee that they'll get back pay at some point?
I don't know. I'm not an expert in that matter, but I mean, I have worked, you know, on Capitol Hill and in the federal government. But there are contractual provisions, you know, public contractual provisions, as it were. But the problem is that this administration, as we've seen, you know, switches sides all the time about what the policy is, and so that uncertainty really freezes up economic growth. It freezes up consumer decisions. It feeds unrest, frankly, among anyone who might support Mr. Trump and his administration. This is not good. It's not a smart path forward, and I'm actually boggled a little bit about this deal. Well, you know, there's a cynical view that I have, is that Mr. Trump would like the economy to slow down so that the Fed will cut interest rates even further. As we know, that is his mantra, is to get the Fed to lower interest rates. And so by freezing up the economy and slowing the economy down, this does put pressure on the Fed to lower interest rates, all other things equal.
One of the biggest things is in the headlines now in the U.S. when it comes to the shutdown is SNAP. That's the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. If the shutdown continues to drag on, we're talking about millions of people now who are cut off from much needed food assistance. I mean, any indication on where that goes and what impact that has on the larger issues at play?
Well, it's a cruel position, to be frank, that the administration and clearly Capitol Hill too generally is playing. You know, the poor are the least, you know, class that can handle this kind of disruption in the economy. And so I think, you know, I'm not sure whether that is of paramount concern, particularly on the Republican side of the aisle. But again, it really erodes any support that Trump may like to garner by different socioeconomic strata of our economy. So this is not a good strategy at all. And maybe calling it a strategy may be a stretch.
Okay, Harry, I mean, you're talking about this not being a good strategy. We keep hearing that Donald Trump is urging Senate Republicans not to compromise with Senate Democrats. If that's the case, if this kind of intransigence continues, even at a time when a lot of polls in the U.S. seem to be indicating that the majority of Americans are blaming what's going on Republicans more than Democrats, what kind of path is there for ending this shutdown and reopening the government?
Well, I think when constituencies speak up in Republican districts, that does put pressure on. I think, as I said before, if the economy really does get severely impacted, which it certainly seems on the path to do, the party in charge, again, whether it's in the executive branch or the legislative branch, has got to get motivated at some point to clear this up. You can stand on your principles just so long, but if the economy implodes, it is the party in power who bears all the risk.
Let me ask you finally, from your vantage point, seeing what you're seeing, is there any kind of scenario that exists at this point where some kind of compromise might be possible?
Well, as I say, I've worked on Capitol Hill. Yes, you can figure out a compromise, and you can put, you know, having the government get funded again, you know, for a certain period of time to take down the heat. is probably a good thing to do so that people can get back, senators can get back to their desks and representatives as well, and begin a more fulsome dialogue. When you bring the temperature down, the immediate temperature down, there's a human reaction. So, okay, so now let's talk. Maybe we can get more momentum. And I think ultimately this is the issue. I mean, there's high stakes politics going on, but when constituencies speak to their senators, and they speak to their House of Representatives, this is where you feel real pressure on those who have been elected.
All right, Harry Broadman, former Chief of Staff on the President's Council of Economic Advisors. Thank you so much for joining us here on Al Jazeera. Great to get your perspective.
Thank you.